What if I told you that long before Uber Eats, Grubhub, and DoorDash, meal delivery was already prevalent and was changing communities across the country? I'm talking, of course, about Meals on Wheels. But who are Meals on Wheels, and what have they been doing for so long that's been impacting our communities here in the Lehigh Valley, across Pennsylvania, and in virtually every community in America? Vicki from the Greater Lehigh Valley Meals on Wheels joins us today to talk about the program and how they're working for a better tomorrow. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Meals on Wheels. It's a name that most of us grew up knowing. It was meal delivery before meal delivery was on your phone. And they have been impacting communities like the Lehigh Valley in pockets throughout Pennsylvania and America for generations. Vicki Coyle is the CEO of Meals on Wheels of the Greater Lehigh Valley. She joins us today. Vicki, welcome to Face the Issues.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. And before we get started, just how are you and your family doing?
Oh, we're doing very well. Thank you.
Good to hear. So Meals on Wheels, I said in the opening, we are all familiar with food delivery today, especially post, in the pandemic with Grubhub, Uber Eats and all this. But when you really think about it, you are the original. Meals on Wheels has been doing this for decades. So tell us, who is Meals on Wheels? What is it that your organization does?
Right. So good point about that, because Meals on Wheels has been active in the Lehigh Valley for 50 years. So this year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. Originally in the Lehigh Valley, the programs were started, one in Lehigh County and one in Bethlehem. It was Meals on Wheels of Bethlehem and then became Meals on Wheels of Northampton County. So there were people 50 years ago who had the vision of providing healthy home delivered meals as well as a social connection to folks who are disabled and otherwise incapable of cooking healthy meals for themselves in order to sustain healthy and safe living.
Yeah, and you just mentioned this. So who does Meals on Wheels serve? I mean, growing up, I knew what Meals on Wheels was, as in I knew the name and I knew this was, as their name suggests, people putting meals in cars and taking them to people. But who does Meals on Wheels serve? What demographic is it?
So it started out serving only seniors, but basically we will serve anyone who's over 18 who is incapable of preparing their own meals or obtaining healthy meals, generally due to age or physical disability. So it could be someone who is homebound, relies on assistance from a care service for activities of daily living, and that's the kind of person we might provide meals to. Or it could be someone who, could be your 85-year-old grandmother who has a little neuropathy in her hands or maybe uses a walker, and for whom preparing meals is really physically difficult and unsafe because, consider someone who's a little unsteady on their feet holding a pot of boiling water because they're trying to make rice or pasta, and, the pan's wobbling and they're at risk of burning themselves, or they're a little forgetful and they forget to turn off a stove, and, it could be a fire hazard or smoke hazard for themselves or an apartment building.
Toward that end, what you guys do, are these prepared meals? So these are all cooked, ready to eat, or are these meals that are prepared but need to be heated to eat, or are these groceries? Or a combination of that? What is Meals on Wheels? What's the product that's being delivered to the door?
The product that we deliver on a daily basis is a hot meal, and it's prepared fresh daily in our kitchen. So we have a commercial kitchen here in Fritz Drive. Actually, in the next 3 weeks, we'll be moving to Sherman Street in Allentown, where we can have a larger kitchen. But right now, we're here in Bethlehem Township, and we make all the food ourselves. And we spend probably $70,000 to $90,000 a year with local farms. And we buy local fresh produce, seasonal produce from local farms to incorporate that into our meals so that we get, the best nutritional bang for our buck.
Yeah, and I love, and I'm going to come back to this a little bit later. I love what you just said about using local farms and the idea that this is really, and Meals on Wheels is all over the country, but is really community driven. And I want to come back to that in a moment here. Looking at your clients, your customers, you had said earlier that these are people who have, it could be a health issue, it could be age, it could be their memory isn't as good as they used to be, or for whatever reason, they lack access to food or they lack access to a good home-cooked meal. I imagine that COVID-19 did not make things easier for the people that you're serving, but nor for your organization. Can you walk us through some of the challenges that the pandemic created for you guys and for the people you serve and for the people who are on your team?
Yes, it really was kind of a four-part challenge. And I will say, much credit goes to the staff here and our volunteers. Everyone really came together very quickly. They adjusted to a lot of change. They were flexible and doing things on the fly, and doing it without complaint. So that's what got us through. It was a fantastic team effort. When I say team, I'm talking about our 1,100 regular meal delivery volunteers as well as paid staff. But we had staff that had to adjust to different protocols in terms of making meals. We had product issues, so we were trying to plan ahead in case there was an interruption in our supply chain. For example, at one point we were really concerned about whether or not we would be able to get the plastic trays that we use to serve the food. And the reason that's an issue is because we have this little conveyor belt. It's almost like the tray fits into it like a puzzle piece. And the staff fill it, put it in the tray, and it goes in through a heat sealer. And then the client's name goes on top. So if you don't have that, you're manually crimping, foil around a cardboard lid for 1,100 meals a day, which, is going to give some people some significant, wrist and finger problems. So we got through that. We did not have major interruptions. We were able to plan ahead for some things. Some of our volunteers withdrew from service for a few months, and most of our volunteers are older folks themselves, so they could be average age is around 65. So there were people who were significantly concerned about their own health risk of COVID, or they lived with someone who was going through chemotherapy or who was immunocompromised, and they were concerned about bringing home the virus if they went out and did some volunteer work. So people were apologizing to us all the time for pulling back from volunteering. I mean, they felt terrible about not being able to do it. On the other hand, within 3 months, we signed up 325 new volunteers. People just responded to our call for assistance. Even when we weren't asking for help, people were volunteering to sign up because they were home, they might have been furloughed, they were working from home now and had some flexibility, and they knew there was a need in the community. We did have several clients who withdrew from service during the time because they were really concerned about people coming to the front door. They were just plain out scared. And many of those clients came back to us in a month or so, or they came back in June when things, got a little bit sort of less immediately stressful. So yeah, managing concerns and, from all those different areas where we had a lot of balls up in the air at any given time.
Sure. It certainly renews your faith in humanity to see that in the middle of a pandemic, there are more people lining up to volunteer. I mean, that's one of those silver lining things. Let me ask you this, you said some of your clientele, they backed off a little bit for whatever reason, but you didn't want exposure to COVID-19 and so forth. Was there a situation where the clientele grew? We know food insecurity has always been a problem. It was a growing problem during the pandemic. We had the head of the Pennsylvania School Board Association here talking about just even, schools providing free meals for their students. And now if you're not in school, where are they going to go, for their meals? Was there an increase in clientele at all? Were there more people calling, needing services?
Yes, I would say we experienced an increase for about 4 months of a good 35 to 40 new clients a month. Normally, we'd have about 64 clients, new people coming on, and it was 95 to 100 for 3 or 4 months. Now, in our work, that you have people coming and going all the time because you've got folks who are in the hospital. So today, for example, I heard one of the volunteers bring a meal back because the client was still in the hospital. So, that's going to happen with seniors, unfortunately. So some people came and went for those usual reasons, but for the most part, we were seeing a good 30 new clients a month at least. And many of them stayed with us. Some were temporary because they may have had family who would visit or bring them food or shop for them. But of course, with the restrictions in place, people were afraid. They didn't want to see their elderly relatives because of risk of transmission. So neighbors who might have been helping someone and cooking for them before no longer did it because, again, everyone was afraid of contact. So we had some people like that who signed on a temporary basis. We get funding from Northampton County and Lehigh County area agencies on aging. They actually had funding to give people more meals. So if someone was getting one meal a day, they looked at their more at-risk clients and gave them a second meal a day. Again, recognizing that the community dining programs, the senior centers were closed. So folks couldn't go down the street to have a communal meal, so they provided extra food that way. So we were generating a lot more meals per day during that time.
Yeah, that's great. Vicki, we're going to go to break here in a moment. Before we do, I just want to ask you one last question in this segment. We're coming out of a pandemic. There's things that are obviously up in the air. But given the challenges that you guys faced in the last year, and just given the overall challenge of food insecurity in our area in general, what is your outlook moving forward for our community and for Meals on Wheels?
I think it's really positive. I mean, our community came together in unbelievable ways and during the pandemic. People got really creative. Their caring and compassion came out and was demonstrated in ways that I think surprised themselves, whether they were individual donors or agency leaders like myself who found new ways to be flexible. But the commitment, I think, of the community and of the nonprofit and the business community individuals to make sure things kept rolling along and helping those in need was really inspiring.
Very, very well stated. Vicki, thank you for that. Don't go away. When we come back, I want to talk more about your organization, some of the solutions to the problems that we have faced in the last year. And so don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. I'm here with Vicki Coyle, the CEO of Meals on Wheels of the Greater Lehigh Valley. Vicki, thank you again for joining us. When we left off, we were talking about your organization, the challenge of food insecurity in the Lehigh Valley, something COVID-19 did not help. And you left off saying that you're optimistic looking ahead. And I want to talk a little bit about the mission of your organization, how you run, and the way that you tackle some of these challenges. So just starting there, Meals on Wheels, we talked about what you guys are, like what you do. What's the driving mission? What is the ultimate goal behind Meals on Wheels? At the end of the day, at the end of the year, when you look back, at what point do you say we hit the goal, this has been a success, or we need to do better?
Well, there's always the, nonprofit, most of our mojo is spent trying to serve more people with the resources that we have. So we always want to get those numbers up. I think for us, what, I call it our nutritional mission. And so when I look at how we're going to help clients and maybe add another dimension to the service that we provide, I'm looking at whether it has anything to do with nutrition and, because you don't want mission creep. You don't want to start grabbing at all these other programs and start getting too far away from your core mission, because that would be really problematic at the end of the day. You get spread too thin and you end up not doing anything very well. But I think what we've done really well, especially in this last year, is identify the areas where our clients are most at need, and it is access to healthy food. So we have a grocery shopping program that suffered during COVID because you remember what the grocery stores were like. It was really hard to find things. They were crowded. They were kind of a scary place for some people. And it took forever to go through, and no one wanted to spend more time than they had to at a grocery store at that time. So we lost some volunteers for those very understandable reasons. But that meant our clients weren't getting food. And so they get one meal a day from us, but they also need other things like toilet paper and laundry detergent and dishwashing liquid and, maybe some bananas and other fresh fruit and things like that. So we've kind of been transitioning our grocery program to take advantage of like the Giant Direct program where volunteers can just pick up curbside. I won't bore you with some of those details, but that was something that we really explored how we could be flexible and change the program. The other thing that we started, which as a pilot, which was a huge success, was a food pantry pickup. So we have our volunteers who pick up our meals on a daily basis between, say 10 and 11, and they go out and deliver. And then the food pantry volunteers pick up once a month and they go to a food pantry. Right now we're working with 5, and they put bags of shelf stable food together for our clients and they take them. So that is sort of to supplement the fact that we can't get a lot of grocery shopping done for people. And these folks, 70% of our clients are really low income. So for them, being able to use a food, they're the people who should be able to use a food pantry. But food pantries don't deliver, and these are isolated senior people who can't get out. So we've kind of bridged that gap. So when we're looking at programs, we think, how are we supporting our clients nutritionally so that they can stay at home? Because that's really the driving force. Our clients want to be at home. They don't want to go in a nursing home. They want their independence. They should be able to choose to live in dignity like anybody else.
Right. Well, I appreciate about what you just said, Vicki, and about your organization is that you really are problem solving. And I think a lot of times we tend to just throw the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. But to your point, food pantries do have an important role in our community and in fighting food insecurity. But there's also a population that's food insecure that doesn't have access to transportation to get there, right? And this becomes a problem that needs a solution. And I love what you just said because it really demonstrates the innovative thinking that you and your organization are doing. Along those lines, I want to ask you, you talked about the different volunteers and the staff. You have 1,100 volunteers, you said, that deliver meals. How big is your team, staff and volunteers and all, and what all do you have people doing?
Well, technically, we probably have close to 2,000 volunteers, but 1,100 are sort of regular. They might come out once a month over the year. We use about 110 volunteers a day to deliver. So we have routes that go out of 6 or 7 different places, and we have about 34 staff who deliver. So the staff come in at 4, 2 staff come in at 4 in the morning, and they start the hot meal process. Then the bulk of the staff is coming in around 6, and they're helping with meal prep and getting the meals in the trays and putting the appropriate label on, because it's not just that not everybody gets the same meal. So it's pretty complicated back there. And a lot of folks may think, well, why can't you use volunteers because you're just scooping food and putting it in a tray? And, it's really much more than that. And the staff back there have to be really conscious of who's getting what, because, you, for example, may be on a medication and you can't have leafy green vegetables because you're on a blood thinner. So we make sure that if spinach is on the menu for today, you're not getting spinach. Or if you tell me I hate peaches and I won't eat beets, that goes in your file so that when we make your meal, if those things are on the menu for the day, you don't get it and you get a substitute. Because the idea is we want you to eat everything in the tray. That's 1/3 of the daily nutritional requirements for older adults. And we don't want you throwing it away. We don't want you giving half of it to your dog or your cat, which is why we have a pet food program. So, for us, it really is kind of a complicated effort. There are 52 different selections that people could make. Their meals would be pretty boring if they did. They'd get like 4 things every day. But for the most part, we try to accommodate preferences so they can eat it. And then our volunteers are the ones who are showing up every day. Today, I happened to be in the meal room when a volunteer was bringing her carrier back. She lives in Bethlehem. She used to work here many years ago, and she still volunteers regularly. She took the route, took a Bangor, a slate belt route. So she lives in Bethlehem Township, and she went all the way up to Bangor to deliver today, and was very specific, telling me about 1 or 2 clients on the list who had some special needs that we had to make sure we looked into. So volunteers do much more than just hand the meal over. They're paying attention. They're reporting back to us if there are any issues of concern about the way the client's behaving, or if the apartment's too hot. In this heat wave, we will get fans to people. We remind them to remind the clients to stay hydrated and things like that. So, yeah, it's a pretty strong relationship with the volunteers.
Vicki, you said earlier that you guys are in your 50th anniversary right now. And we had Jeremy Everett on the show a while back. He is on the Commission for Food Insecurity in the United States and runs the Texas Hunger Initiative. And he had said that this is really a collaborative effort. We're not going to end food insecurity because one group or one team of volunteers is it not going to be able to end it for everyone. It's a collaborative effort. You guys are doing that. 50 years, you have to have success stories. Where do you see your organization fitting in that larger effort on food insecurity? And how have you seen this group grow and really meet that need?
Well, I think that's a conversation that community providers who are in the food business, nonprofit business, need to have together. And that sometimes during COVID last year, there were various task forces and things that would meet, and we're not necessarily a vibrant part of some of them, but I think we will be going forward because our new building is a big facility. We will have a large commercial kitchen. That kitchen will be available if a group wants to come in and make meals for whoever, or if farmers want to come in and make tomato sauce that they can sell at a farm market. We have a cafe that will be available for community groups to come and have lunch and try our food. And, hopefully we'll use it as a memory cafe where other folks who are dealing with dementia issues can come in. It's a safe space where there'll be some programming and, so we'll be working with other groups like that. I hope that we are part of the larger conversation about food and food access, because I think we've come up with some pretty creative ways to help address food access. I think Meals on Wheels across the country, and certainly my experience with this one has been Meals on Wheels, whether it's the staff or volunteers, they get things done, and they don't like to wait. They don't like to be told to hold on while people talk about policy. I mean, I hear from volunteers all the time who, are just saying, we need to solve this problem. Let's get this done. Why is this in our way? Why can't you do something about this? They see a need and they see hunger and they go after it.
Vicki, last question to close out this segment. If somebody's watching and they say, hey, this sounds like something that I would work for where I am right now, I may need to be a client, or someone says, I want to jump in and I want to volunteer with Meals on Wheels, where do they go? How can they do that?
They can either call the office, and that number is 610-691-1030. And if it's services, they would ask for client services. If they'd like to volunteer, they would ask for volunteer services. But our website, which is on your screen there, would also have that information.
All right, and the website is mowglv.org. Vicki Coyle, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Again, my guest today is Vicki Coyle, CEO of Meals on Wheels of the Greater Lehigh Valley. Vicki, thank you so much for being with us, for the work that you and your team do. As you know, we like to close out our show by really getting to know our guests. And Meals on Wheels of the Lehigh Valley has been around for 50 years. You are obviously far too young to have been CEO for all 50 of those years. You haven't always been with Meals on Wheels. You have a fascinating background. Talk to us a little bit about that and about how you got to where you are now.
Oh, yeah. I was a practicing trial attorney for some years in Bethlehem, and had been in the DA's office and as assistant DA. And on the side, though, what I really like is nonprofit community work. So when I first came to this area, I was on the board of a couple of different agencies, and just that really resonated with me. And I was on the board of Turning Point of Lehigh Valley. And when I was at a particular transition time in my life, the director position opened up, and I thought, I know a lot about this work and I think I can do it. So that's when I transitioned over to nonprofit management. So I was there, and then I went to legal aid, which is in this area, North Penn Legal Services, and was there for 15 years. That's where legal lawyers provide low income or free services, actually, to folks who have civil legal needs. And that was fascinating work. Statewide a lot of statewide stuff. We had 20 counties at that agency. That's a really, really hard job. But honestly, I wanted to kind of get back to a stronger connection with volunteers and kind of more grassroots in the community stuff. And that's what attracted me about Meals on Wheels.
Let me ask you this. I know a lot of time I talk to a lot of people who want to do work like this, and they're interested in really just serving the community, not just as a volunteer, but in roles like yours. And I actually, ironically, get the question a lot about law school and whether, do I need to go to law school and does it help? Do you find, you were a lawyer, a successful lawyer, do you find that background as an asset to the work that you do now?
Yes, I do. Do I think it's required? Absolutely not. But for me, I had years of nonprofit board service and volunteerism under my own belt, so I felt like I at least had understood the fabric of the work that I was going to do. And the law degree helps. I mean, you're always, as a lawyer, you're always juggling a lot of information, and you're trying to sort through it and develop strategies and decide best course of action. So that's kind of natural for these kinds of leadership positions, but you don't have to get that through law school.
Good advice. Vicki Coyle, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you for the work that you and your team do. And we'll look to have you on for a future episode.
Great. Happy to do it. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you again. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll tune in again next week, right here at the same time. My name is Sam Chan. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.